In 2017, I spent a year studying Vincent Van Gogh, and as well as creating a bust of Vincent, I painted 67 oil paintings. And here's Vincent's story, my story, and I hope a story that speaks to us all. Vincent often wrote to his brother Theo. This is my brother Philip. So, dear brother, after a year with Vincent, what did I learn? We can all have places like Vincent saw. He painted windmills in Paris, and this is Lytham in the northwest of England. Vincent developed his painting skills in Paris. He socialised with other painters, and absinthe was a favoured drink. I studied painting technique and needed to express myself in my own way. We all have our favourite flowers. I painted flowers, but I hadn't found my flower. Vincent painted statuettes to help with his skills. Here I use a statuette in my lounge to develop my broad brushwork. He worked as an art dealer, a teacher and an evangelist before becoming an artist. I worked as an art conservator, a teacher of religion and dance. Vincent painted himself many times, and I use his image to develop my own brushwork style. He was friends with the art supplier Per Tangai and was influenced by Japanese art. And this is my Chinese art tutor with my paintings behind her. Vincent's studies included a skeleton smoking, and here I painted a skull of Vincent smoking his pipe. Van Gogh moved to the south of France to find a Japanese-style paradise of sunlight and nature. Here is a blossoming tree in my nearby town of Southport. He later remembered this period when mentally ill and painted blossom branches. Twigs from the blossom branches were placed in a jar. Vincent wore a straw hat to work in the open air. I wore my straw hat when finding local places that looked like his paintings. Vincent's earlier still life studies were dark and rural. Mine are light and suburban. He often painted his worn out boots and his shoes. Here are my light daytime shoes and my dancing shoes. He painted wheat fields in Paris, but in a similar scene I found my flower, the golden rapeseed in Solemn. The beauty when we are in the summer of life is overwhelming. His painting of an old man in sorrow is from later in his life. Here, surrounded by flowers, I am full of hope. The sunflower is alone, the rapeseed is made of many smaller flowers. Sitting in a vase, there are many sunflowers together. With the rapeseed, each flower is made of many. Vincent's sunflowers symbolised his relationship with his brother. My flowers show my relationship to my life partner, Stephanie. Sitting by the canal, I felt there was something missing in my life. I was getting old, facing a midlife crisis. I have replaced Les Allichamps Avenue in Arles with Avon Park in Preston. He painted active boats in Sainte Marie, but the boats in Lancashire are now resting and decaying. My partner Stephanie, a beautiful lady, is holding the flower of youth. We walk around Preston docks and Van Gogh's stars are obscured by electric lights. We made a pilgrimage to Van Gogh's Arles in the south of France. Stephanie is sitting in the famous cafe in the Place du Forum. Here is the bar of the Camber Club where we teach swing dance. In Arles, we met up with Bernadette Murphy, author of Van Gogh's Here, who showed us many places where Vincent lived and worked. Van Gogh was friends with his postman Joseph, and here is our postman Dave. We visited the site of Vincent's yellow house that was bombed in the Second World War. It was where he wanted to set up an artist colony. The yellow house was Vincent's creative studio, and my own studio for writing was local cafes. I replaced Vincent's bedroom with local cafes where I read books on Vincent. My daily diet of tea and scones in a pretty village setting provides an opportunity for a still life study. In the cafe, Vincent's chair is upturned and sitting on my own. The pipe on Vincent's chair represented his ornate inner self on a plain exterior. I found the same French pipe. I also painted my sculpture of 4 chairs. Vincent was a kind of artistic Christ, sacrificing himself for art. Paul Gauguin stayed in the yellow house of Vincent. They argued, Gauguin left and Vincent pursued him with a razor. When confronted, Vincent returned to the house, cut off his left ear and then gave it to a young woman at a nearby brothel. Vincent was treated for his ear in the local hospital and only survived because the young doctor knew of the latest treatments. He was then treated for his mind at St. Paul's Sanatorium in Saint-Remy. We visited St. Paul's and passed a statue of him that looked like a ghost. The beautiful cloisters were both a refuge and prison. The bright light of paradise beckoned beyond the doors. Vincent was free to wander outside, but he looked out through barred windows onto the gardens. In the gardens, the sunflowers were parched from a summer drought. Vincent painted himself in this troubled period, and out of the dark of despair comes hope. From a small death comes life. The stars and the moon give us hope. This hope carries us through until we reach a dawn. And like the olive tree, we renew, regrow, and our crop can be picked. We walk through nature's beauty and are connected with it. I replaced Van Gogh's working class family with my middle class brother Stephen and his family. My partner Stephanie's parents are no longer with us, and before too long I'll lose my parents. The Good Samaritan offers us hope that people can be part of one big family. Vincent moved north to Auvers-sur-Oise, where he was under the watch of Dr. Gachet. I was working on my paintings until I got migraines and had to see my doctor, who did not want to be painted. A white house in Auvers is here replaced with the house where I live with Stephanie. In autumn, wheat had replaced the rapeseed in the solemn fields. And Stephanie stood where she belonged, at home in nature. The complex beauty of the wheat fields was hard to capture. In painting it, I engaged with its forms and colours. Growing to full ripeness in the sun, Van Gogh's work had reached its peak, and yet it felt like he had failed. And like the reaper of wheat, we all faced the grim reaper. Vincent shot himself in the fields around Auvers. His brother, who had supported him financially, had a new son also called Vincent, and Van Gogh didn't want to be a burden to them anymore. After the harvest, the worker can rest. Vincent had returned to the stars. Perhaps there is an afterlife, or perhaps nature is all that there is. Like Van Gogh's crows, my goals announce migration or death. Stephanie walks in our local village church grounds where her parents are buried. We all head down a straight road to death, but the sun can present us with a kind of hope of a life after death. So what do I think Van Gogh can teach us? The Van Gogh paradox. We make art about nature, but art is artificial. The need for expression is natural, and yet art begins to rival nature. We need a balance between art and nature, between mankind and nature. And at the moment we have too much mankind, too much art. In my contemporary art, here, manufactured chairs are used to symbolise Van Gogh as a sun, a windmill, a Christ crucified. Here is a collection of pipes like those Van Gogh smoked, each birthing or smoking the next. The ear that he offered to a young woman has become a chocolate ear, a Eucharistic consumer item. The sunflowers have turned into manufactured sunflower spreads. The subject matter and the materials of contemporary art are artificial and shall be alienated from nature. Sunflowers are industrially categorised, catalogued and genetically modified. But here is the pipe that shows us Vincent's colourful essence, a relic of his inner being. Vincent ate paint in his disturbed mind when at San Remi Sanatorium. In my performance, I lick and spit the 14 sunflowers onto a glazed frame. So again, what did I learn from a year with Vincent? Vincent taught me a deep appreciation of nature and to love nature more than art. Because if our legacy is art, then it is dead, inanimate objects, whereas humanity and nature are living. And when we identify nature, then we can balance it with our humanity and art, and that gives us meaning and a way of living after death. I wanted to pay homage to Vincent with a sculpture, so I searched all his many self-portraits and combined them into one image. And in my sculpture, here we have a box of his paints, the pipe he smoked, the razor he cut his ear with, the gun he shot himself with. His letters and his relationship with his brother, symbolised with sunflowers. Vincent will live on in the trees and flowers that we shared the beauty of. We only have to look after these trees and flowers